Japanese.
It's been a while since Ed has said something during the intro. It's been a real while, hasn't it? But it's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome back. I've just got an email. I need to send my emails off. Oh my god. Welcome back to episode 32 of the Early Bar Football Podcast. It's a Monday. It's the 17th of January. We're midway through the January transfer window, and I don't think anyone's done anything. I think no one's really made a signing or two, unless you're Newcastle, obviously.
Or Villa. Villa are doing all right.
Yeah, no, to be fair. I've
Eat
vastly...
your words.
Yeah, my words have eaten. Consider them eaten. 8. Anyway, let's talk about many football things which I have. Let's dive in two-footed into this week's football news. How about that? I'm joined by Chris. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hello. I'm good, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. It's Monday, but you know what? We're nearly at the end of the week, kind of ish, depending on how you want to look at it. That's the optimistic way of looking at it. But that's great. You were telling me you went to see Spider-Man again yesterday.
I did.
Saturday.
I did, and it's just an amazing film. It's just an amazing
10 out of 10 Chris Olive review, which is what you want. Fantastic. Ed, good evening. You actually went to see a football game at the weekend. You went to see 2, weren't you?
Yeah, but I actually didn't go to the first one.
That's a shame.
Yeah, I was supposed to go and see the huge 6-pointer in League One, which was Wimbledon versus Morecambe. Glad I didn't go because it was 0-0.
God.
And my mate that I was supposed to be going with that did go said, good ground, actually, because I know, Kieran, you were asking me what the ground's like because you're going to go at some point. Decent ground, but the football wasn't great. Neither side could finish.
Up the plough lane, up the new plough lane, I must say. Anyway, Ash, hello. You're wearing a hat. How are you?
Hello. Yes. It's been a sunny day up in Birmingham. You know, just been out and about. Came straight to the podcast from my shots.
Is that why you're late?
Yeah, that is why I'm late.
Is it a bad hair day? Is that why?
It is also a bad hair day. I'll get my haircut next weekend for all the listeners. Just so don't worry. I promise I'll be hatless next pod.
Yeah, we don't hat shame here. You can wear whatever you want. That's a bit free, but yeah, no, we are a free podcast.
No sarcasm there.
Yeah.
You can wear whatever you want.
You can wear whatever you want. Please, okay. And Jack, how are you? How's it going?
I'm very well, thank you. I've not got a cap, unfortunately.
No, you haven't, but that's absolutely fine. And your Algeria tip to win the AFCON is going well, isn't it?
Yeah. No, prefer not to speak.
Jose Mourinho has entered the room.
Messaging Faguli on Instagram saying, "What are you playing at?"
Oh dear! Right, let's crack on with the biggest news of this footballing day, and that is Everton have sacked Rafa Benitez. And have I spelled that right, Chris?
You have spelled that right.
I was saying, I was saying pre-pod. I always spell Benitez the wrong way. I always put that I in that second E. Swap it around.
Benitez.
So I'm glad. Benitez. But yeah, Rafa Benitez has been sacked. Everton are sat like 15th in the Premier League. They're really in kind of this relegation battle on like 19 points. I didn't realise they were doing so badly. But he's gone. And Ed, did you want to come in there?
I was going to say it's a very Blue Monday for Everton fans.
Topical joke.
No.
Topical, very good.
No.
Topical pun. But Agent Rafa has done his job, as the Liverpool fan will probably say here. But Chris, was it deserved, do you think? And we'll talk about who Everton can get in next after this. But let's just talk about Benitez and Everton and the state of play that they're in. Chris, do you think it was sort of the time for Rafa to go?
I think it was deserved. You look at the record. It's only one Premier League win in 13 games, which, funny enough, that come against Arsenal.
Obviously,
it comes against Arsenal. It's on the Out of Context Arsenal page, and that. But yeah, I mean, I do feel a bit for Rafa because obviously he like Everton were massively plagued by injuries and that, and I think like. It ain't just his fault. Like I think Everton, there's a lot deeper problems within the club, in that, like the players haven't done haven't done any justice whatsoever. I mean, defensively, they've been absolutely shocking this season. I mean, I remember watching that game against Watford when they lost 5-2 and Josh King scored a hat-trick against his old club. They were awful defensively, and this past Saturday, again, they were absolutely shocking against... I mean, all right, I touted Norwich as a bit of a dark horse. So I was quite happy that Norwich did get the win, obviously, to make my prediction look a bit better than that. But like, just some of the mistakes that Everton players were making were just... I mean, Mykolenko, I mean, he nearly gift-wrapped Norwich a goal, thinking, oh yeah, Pickford's I'll pass it back to him, and pretty much played Ida in, and just a shame he flushed his lines from a Norwich point of view. But and also, like, with Mashiri as well, he's been, what is he? He's had the majority stake in Everton since February 2016. I mean, they're already looking at their 7th permanent manager in his tenure, and that's just not acceptable. I mean, you look at the money that's been spent as well. They've spent so much money, and that was another thing that I do feel a bit bad for Rafa about, was he come in and they had to come under FFP and that. So Rafa, he had to go bargain hunting in the summer. And to be fair, Rafa, he done good business bringing like Damari Gray, Townsend. They've been fantastic signings. Salomon Rondon, probably the less said the better, because I know Everton fans aren't a big fan of him. And I think I did see a stat that every game Rondon has started, Everton haven't won as well.
Oh, no.
I think you can probably say that about a few Everton players.
I think more many games.
Yeah. I think you can, to be fair, but yeah. I think Everton, the problem lies a lot deeper than what it does with the manager. But yeah, at the end of the day, football is a results-based business, and unfortunately, Rafa wasn't getting the results, and I think he did have to go.
Poor Rafa. Ed, I think I can't remember who said in the chat, but basically someone said Rafa Benitez is making a living off a comeback from 2005 when he was Liverpool manager.
Who do you think it was?
That might have been Josh Levy.
That
was Josh Levy. Yeah.
Josh Levy.
Yeah. I didn't want to. Yeah. Well, do you agree with that statement, or do you think that he's been hard done by here, Rafa?
I think that's a little bit harsh. He's made it a bit more dramatic than it's making out. I think as Chris has just made the point, you look at it on paper, he's not done well enough with Everton.
No.
They've one win in the last 5 in the league is not good enough for Everton. Like you said, the amount of money they've spent to be down where they are isn't good enough. I think he's quite a defensively tactical manager. He's not a manager that's going to come in and you're going to start winning games 4-3, 5-4. It's going to be 1-0 wins here and there to start with. And then what Rafa likes to do is build a base and a defensive foundation and then start to look at becoming a bit more attacking. And Everton just can't defend. They don't seem to be able to follow what he's asking them to do. They're conceding goals left, right and centre. When you conceding goals the way they are against Norwich, who are possibly one of the worst Premier League teams we've ever seen,
question mark. No, not having that.
Come on.
Question
They're going to stay
up. They might do. But a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, we were saying they could be worse than Derby.
You said that.
We, the collective we, the royal we.
Yeah, I think they got more points than Derby now, though, haven't they?
Yeah,
I think they do.
How did Derby have 11?
I think it was
Norwich on.
They're on 13.
Heights of 13.
Yeah,
just to beat Derby fans when they're already a bit down.
Very much down. But yeah, I don't think Rafa's had great resources to work with, like Chris mentioned. Hasn't had any money really to improve the squad. Had key injuries to key players. Doucouré started the season really well, got injured. So did Calvert-Lewin. Just not really had anything to work with. But you've got to grind out results in this league, and they just haven't been able to do it. And he's paid the price, unfortunately.
It is such a real shame for Rafa.
It is a real shame for a Liverpool fan because it's great seeing Everton down there.
Oh dear. Ash, what went wrong for Rafa Benitez on Merseyside Part 2?
What went right, really? I mean...
I'll go for it if you want to go what went right.
No, just in general, like Mashiri He must be he can't see a red flag, like Hugh, literally red, Liverpool. You can't, as an Everton owner, you should not be hiring Rafael Benitez as your manager. It's so obvious that the fans are not going to take to him. And we already know Everton, in this kind of position they are struggling to know where should they be, what's their target. And there's already discontent and sort of debate amongst their own fans of where should we get to. And you add Rafa Benitez into that sort of concoction, and you get even more uneasiness amongst the fans. And if they're at home at Goodison Park, where they've been slightly better than when they have been away, but there's just an uneasiness amongst the crowd and sort of a lack of togetherness. And I don't think they've ever really 100% got behind Rafa, and that's obviously a problem. Chris is right to point out that, of course, the problems go deeper than Rafa. I think, look at the players that they've signed. They've splurged millions and millions of pounds on terrible players. And I think Marcel Brands has to take a lot of the blame for that, being in the sort of technical director role. And at least, okay, Mashiri's made bad decisions, you can say, in terms of his appointments. But one thing you can't criticise him for is the money he's actually put into the club. And the last thing I was going to say on Everton, I mean, Ed and Chris have defended Rafa a bit, but I'm going to go for his lineup against Norwich on...
Go for it.
Okay. So Pickford in goal, Coleman, Godfrey, Keane, Mikalenko, Gordon, Doucouré, Andre Gomez, Gray, Rondon, Calvert-Lewin. That is not a team that should be losing to, as Ed alluded to, someone... It's really not that bad a side. So I know they have obviously had more injuries throughout the season. But ultimately, that's a decent team. All right, Rondon's not fired. You've got Calvert-Lewin just back from injury. Okay, but they're not that bad. And I just think it was doomed to fail from the instant with Rafa Benitez. And it'd be interesting to see actually where Rafa goes from here, because I do think, although Leafy went too far with his comment that he's finished since 2005, he is one of these managers that seems to be on the way out, football's changing, and I'm not sure Rafael Benitez is changing with the pace of football.
Well, just to show how in sync that we are here on the Early Bar Football Podcast, my question to Jack Hollyford was, where does Rafael Benitez go next? So I will ask you that, Jack. Where does Rafael Benitez go next?
I don't know, because I sort of agree with Barnes a little bit in the way that the game's sort of changed. I think specifically the Premier League, I think, has moved on from the sort of... I remember when we were younger, we used to watch the Prem. Literally every team used to play 4-4-2. Every team pretty much used to play 4-4-2. And then
now everyone plays 4-3-3.
Yeah, or Chelsea play 3-4-3 or 5-3-2. It's all these other formations that come into play. And I just think that maybe he needs to adapt a little bit. I don't know, but to be honest, his next move, I have no idea, because I can't remember that. I think the only time he's ever won a title was in Valencia, wasn't it? And that was about 20 years ago. That was the really early noughties.
Yeah.
So I mean, since the Liverpool, has he won anything else since Liverpool? I don't think he has he?
I think did manage Real Madrid. I don't know if he won La Liga, but he definitely won something there, like
a Spanish Cup or something.
Yeah,
maybe.
Copa del Rey.
Yeah, didn't he win something at Napoli? I want to say he won like an Italian Cup at Napoli.
It maybe won the Coppa Italia. I don't know. It's a strange one, because I think he's sort of in that, he's moved into that bracket now that he's sort of turned into an emergency manager rather than a manager that somebody would sign as like a project manager. Like they would sign, like Newcastle have looked at Eddie Howe and gone, we could give you this, plays the sort of football we want to play, and like a 5-year plan. Rafa, since Liverpool, hasn't really had that job where he's been given it and go, right, this is your team, build it how you want. He's literally been brought in when it's all gone wrong, and he's had to try and fix it. So, I think sort of harshly judged in a way, because it's a very difficult situation to be like that. And I think he's sort of been put into that position where, like with Newcastle as an example, isn't it? He sort of had to do what he could with that team, because he wasn't going to it was never destined for greatness. But to be fair to him, he'd done pretty well for what he had. So. Yeah.
Just like to apologise. Yeah, I'd like to apologise. He won absolutely nothing as Real Madrid manager, because he was only there for 6 months. He won the Italian Cup competition with Inter Milan and the Coppa Italia. He won the Supercoppa Italiana with Inter Milan and Coppa Italia with Napoli.
Yeah, and he won a Europa League with Chelsea as well.
Yeah, and also here, lads, on rafabenitez.com, he has won the Don Ballon Award, which is the best coach for something in maybe Italy.
He's made that up. Also, why has he got his own website? Did you boys see that he released a statement on his own website, Rafael Benitez?
I think that's a huge play. That's an absolutely huge play.
Big flex, that is.
Yeah.
So is it literally www.rafaelbenitez.com?
Just Rafa. The nickname is Rafa Benitez. Because, he's a personable character, he's not, he's your mate. He's your mate, Rafa. He's, you've just likened him to the continental Alan Pardew, I think there, Jack. Just comes in and firefights.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think he's sort of been put in that position now. I don't think he's been I don't think he's maybe, I don't know whether it's unfairly or not. He hasn't really been given that opportunity to be in a club that's looking to progress. He's always, ever since he's left Real Madrid and sort of Chelsea, he's come in as a 6-month manager.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, his next job is literally, you just don't know. You don't know whether he's going to be.
Yeah. You could argue that Everton was an opportunity to move away from that, but then he got slapped with, we've got to meet FFP. You haven't got any money to spend.
Yeah.
So, tricky
one.
one.
And the fans hate you as well.
Yeah, and the fans hate you.
I should just put Paella dice.
Give it a shot.
That's it. There's nothing more to add.
I have nothing more to add to that.
Cheers, Jeff. But let's move on to the second part of this loaded question, which is the new Everton manager ? Who could Everton actually get in? I'll read out a list here that Chris and I and Ed partly compiled pre-pod. And these are just the names that are just going through. We've got Graham Potter, Wayne Rooney, Big Dunk, Big Sam, Nuno, Roberto Martinez, Sean Dyche, Paulo Fonseca, Kasper Kuhlmann, Frank Lampard, Lucien Favre, Slavan Bilic, Gennaro Gattuso, and Jose Mourinho. And what I was going to do was go through each person and we can just talk about them, but I didn't realize there'd be about 1,000 names, so we're not going to do that. So I'm just going to let you talk about who you think might be the new Everton manager and who shouldn't be. And you know what? I'm going to come back down the line. I'm going to start with Jack and work our way backwards in a first for the Early Bar Football Podcast, because why not? It's Blue Monday and we can do that. So Jack, who do you reckon could be Everton manager next?
I tell you, I think Mourinho is a definite no-no. I don't think there's any chance he's going to leave Roma.
Well, I saw that on the BBC Sport website.
Really? I think he's got quite a good deal there, because I think they actually have given him quite a bit of freedom to do what he likes, and he's starting to build.
They're saying 8th though, I think, Roma. They're not doing too great. No,
but I think they're a bit of a rebuild, aren't they? They're struggling. I think a few of their players have been injured at the start of the season, and they lost Dzeko, didn't they? And they bought an Abraham.
They did.
So they sort of lost their best player, really, and then sort of bought in even though Tammy's been brilliant, he's still got,
probably the most informed English striker at the minute, isn't he?
I think so. I think we talked about this, didn't we, before, that he's probably, at the moment, got to be one of the first names in the squad for the next England team, really. Well, I'm drifting off topic. I think probably the Denmark manager. I can't pronounce his name, but I think
Kasper Kuhlmann, apparently.
I'll go with him as a bit of an outsider, because I think I've sort of listened to a few Everton fans that appeared on various radio shows and podcasts and stuff like that, talking about who they want, and a lot of them are saying, I sort of agree with them, that I think because of the pressure on the chairman, I think they're going to have to commit to trying to change the type of manager that they've been consistently, the last few managers have been quite defensively minded, and I think they might try and transition it to maybe something a bit different. And I think I think they won't necessarily employ a name like an Allardyce or a Dyche. I think it will be a more forward-thinking manager. And I think the Danish manager has done really well. Denmark have always overachieved, really, and they do play some good stuff. So I think he could definitely be a candidate.
Are you not tempted by Wayne Rooney and the fairy tale story?
I don't think he'd take it, to be honest. I know Derby's not ideal, but he's on a pretty good run at the moment, and I think Everton is a huge risk for a relatively inexperienced manager.
I feel he has nothing to lose at Derby.
I think it's always going to be positive, isn't it? Even if they get relegated, I still think that he'll be held quite high regard, considering he hung around and they still played. They still done quite well at the minute. But Everton, it's just at the moment in this point in the season, I just think it's a lose-lose really for a
Poison
manager.
chalice, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult position because every year they're expected to be sort of like how Villa are doing at the moment. The sort of Villa less they're sort of meant to be sort of in around that sort of 6th, 7th place. Getting close to the top 4, but they're miles off it. And I think
where they were similar to where they were under David Moyes, like 6th, 7th position every year. But then when the big boys come to town, it's a very difficult game, which they haven't been for a long time.
No, they're very far off that, aren't they? They're really teetering on the edge of being. Well, they're definitely the worst form team in the league, but they're dropping like a stone at the moment. So,
yeah, I think Rooney only has to look at what's happened to Lampard in terms of going from a Championship club and overachieving, going to a Premier League club, that whole fairy tale story, and then it just sort of doesn't go great. So, take a leaf out of your mate's book, Wayne, potentially. Ash, what do you think? The next Everton manager, who do you see that the Everton fans want? And then I think the second question is, who does the chairman actually get in? I think those are two very different questions.
They are very different. And I feel like Everton fans are going to be in for some disappointing news.
You said none of them really fill me. If I was an Everton fan, you said none of the names on that list would fill me with much confidence on one of the lists that we saw before.
No, if you look on if you look on any betting company, look at the odds for next Everton manager, and you you look at the list of managers, and some of them you just named as well. None of them you think they're going upwards really in their career, with maybe the exception of Rooney. But I completely agree with what you and Jack were just saying about his stock's rising at Derby's building a good reputation. He's on he can't really lose there at the minute because even if he goes down, it doesn't matter. So for Rooney, it doesn't really make sense. But I think the name that they will go for and is currently odds on, and I have no idea why this would happen, is Roberto Martinez, which is currently below evens now to get the.
Is it 2013 again?
And that makes absolute Mashiri sacked him, and all the same problems. Even if he starts well and they say they have a good end to the season under Martinez, all the same problems are going to come. We talking. Ed was saying earlier that they can't defend. Well, I don't think Roberto Martinez is going to come in and make that situation much better. To be honest, if it was me and I had the choice, and I have seen this person linked briefly, I'd go for Jesse March. He was sacked by RB Leipzig earlier this season. I will say he did lose 6-3 to Man United, so that's not good, especially Man United under Ollie. But at the end, he did very well at New York. I was going to say Red Bulls then. Yeah, New York Red Bulls, and then he did very well at Salzburg as well. And as well as doing well, he also implemented a system and had a style of play. And I think he has actually also won stuff. He's a young coach. He could go in there and really change the philosophy. And I don't think Everton will get relegated. I'm going to go for they're too good to go down. So I think sort of giving that coach time to implement their methods and sort of say, all right, we might lose a few. We're going to, we might not be great for the rest of the season, but we're going to bring someone in who has a young coach who has a vision to improve the team. I don't think currently you could get someone that much better than Jesse March. He didn't really do that badly at Leipzig. His record wasn't okay. They were middling in the Bundesliga and they'd like to be further up, but they weren't awful. And they did play some really exciting football. I think if I was an Everton fan, I just want some excitement, similar to the Newcastle situation when they brought in Howe. They've so many boring managers playing crap football, and you just want something to get behind, something to be excited by, and that's the kind of appointment that would excite me. But I have to admit, there isn't a lot on the market really that's that great, I don't think.
I mean, with Roberto Martinez, what has he really done? He's had a Belgium side which is meant to be the golden generation for the last 7 years or whatever it is, who are meant to be winning every single competition because they've got the best squad in the world, ranked number 1 in the world, and they've not done anything really in the grand scheme of things. So you could argue, what has Roberto Martinez actually done to warrant any big Premier League job or any big job in the world? Because he's not really led Belgium to anything. But Ed, I'll come to you, and I was going to make this point for either you or Chris, but I'll put it to Chris. I'll put it to you actually, because you said it. Graham Potter, his stock's very high. I don't think personally he would leave Brighton, which is a project that he's a part of, which I think he's very committed to to an Everton job, which may give him more money. It's a bigger club. I'm not going to deny that, and I don't think a lot of Brighton fans will probably deny that either. But why would you go to Everton over and leave Brighton?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you try and put yourself in his shoes. I don't think you'd leave Brighton at the minute, the season they're having, for Everton. I think, yes, it is a bigger club, but you've got such a rebuild job going on at Everton. And I think there would be money available at some point, but I don't know whether they'd give you that much in January. I mean, there's only 2 weeks of January left, so you'd have to wait until the summer. You'd have to try and ride out the storm. Yeah, I don't think they could throw enough money at me if I was Graham Potter to move to Everton from Brighton. I think if he were to leave Brighton, it would either have to be for one of the big six or one of those chasing packs. So, for example, if Brendan Rodgers got poached by somebody and then Leicester were without a manager, maybe that was what would be where he would go next, or maybe a big club in Europe or something. But I don't think he'd be going to somewhere like Everton in the shape that they are at the moment.
So you've said no to Graham Potter.
No, Graham Potter.
On behalf of Graham Potter, you've said no. Who do you think will be on the blue half of Merseyside?
Similar to what Ash was saying, like I think a wider point that would be interesting to try and understand is, as a football club owner or chairman or whoever it is that's making a decision, what actually goes through their head when they're debating whether or not to sack a manager? Yes, performances on the pitch and like maybe the atmosphere in the dressing room and player morale and stuff, but I'd like to think that as a practical business person, you'd have somebody lined up or some candidates that you were considering before you actually sack them. Like that, surely this shouldn't be an instant decision like, oh, we've lost to Norwich, got to sack the manager. They've been surely thinking about this for a couple of weeks. They've maybe told Rafa that, look, your job's on the line. We're not impressed. And then you'd maybe start putting out feelers to see who's available, because we've just gone through the list. There is nobody of any real caliber that's available that would come. I mean, Wayne Rooney would be a fan's favourite, and it would certainly, to Ash's point earlier, get the fans on side, because he did leave them for Man United, but he went on to be one of England's best ever footballers. So they can't.
He went back, didn't he, as well? So
he did go back as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So that would be a good appointment from a fan's perspective. But like we said, would he take it at the moment? I don't know. Has he actually got enough experience to take on Everton at the moment? Arguable. And he's got pretty win-win situation at Derby, as we've mentioned. So I don't think he would take it. Duncan Ferguson, he's been at Everton a long time. He knows the club like the back of his hand, but again, doesn't really have that much experience of being the manager. Very good at being the assistant attacking coach, perhaps, but yeah, holes in his CV, I'd say. Some of the other names we've mentioned, Roberto Martinez, surely not. I don't think I've ever heard of a club sack a manager, because remember, when they were under Martinez, they were not very good. They were very poor. For him to then go away and be Belgium manager, which is a bit of a dream of a job, isn't it? Let's be honest. And like you alluded to,
I remember thinking, like, how did he even get that Belgium job?
No idea. And as you alluded to, arguably has underachieved a little bit with the squad he's got. For him to then go back, that would just be bonkers, and it would probably sum up the owner, really, wouldn't it? Frank Lampard, potentially. I mean, I'm sure he's desperate to get a job, isn't he? He's been out of football for ages now, and he's still quite young. Not got a massive amount of names on his CV. Nuno, I think, was one mentioned.
Yep, he was.
Possible. I feel like that's the caliber of manager that they're looking to. They're not going to bring in a world beater, are they? Let's be honest.
Well, they brought in an Ancelotti at one point.
They did, yeah, and he got poached very quickly, didn't he? I just honestly don't know. I don't even think I could give you one name that I think should go there. I think, like Ash said, they need somebody that's going to inject a bit of excitement and enthusiasm into the club, because there's nothing worse than going and watching a team play for a manager that you're not massively behind and they're playing dull football. At least with some sides who maybe are a little bit dodgy defensively, there's the chance that you're going to score. You know, you're going to win the game 2-1 or 3-2. Everton just don't look like that side at the moment at all. So, yeah, they need some energy. They need a spark. And looking at the list, they're pretty few and far between.
So you don't know?
I honestly don't think I could give you one name that I think should take it. I'd love to see Slaven Bilic back in the Premier League, but I don't think he would be the best candidate for the boxes that Everton need to tick.
Well, On behalf of you, I'll just pick Neil Warnock for you then.
Okay, cool.
Neil Warnock is Everton's choice.
Chris Wilder, Oxford legend.
Northampton legend, Chris Wilder, you could say. Or Sheffield United legend. Chris, you made a really good point earlier in the week in the chat that the chairman just choose it like a ragtag bunch of managers. There's no consistency.
Yes.
So it's really, that's probably speaks to Ed's point of he has no idea of who Everton could and should get in, because there's no sort of track record of, style of manager, type of manager, etc. But sort of two questions here for you. One, what manager do you think could go to Everton? And two, do you think they're in a relegation battle? I don't think they are, because I said earlier in the chat that even though they're on the same points as Leeds, I feel Everton will do something about it, and they have. They've sacked Rafael. Whereas I don't think Leeds will sack Bielsa before the end of the season, even if he gets really into that relegation battle, which is why I think that Leeds are in a relegation battle, but Everton are not, despite being on the same points. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'll answer your second question first, if that's okay.
Oh, good. Very good.
I generally think Everton, at this moment in time, I think they are in a relegation battle.
Well, cool, yeah. The facts speak for themselves.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the results. I mean, 1 win in 13. Those players aren't going to have much confidence at all, really, are they? And you look at the difference between Everton and Leeds. Leeds, all right, yeah, they're going to stick with Bielsa, but at least they're going to stick to a style of play which the players know and train for. Whereas at Everton, like even under Benitez, you don't really know what their style of play was. All right, you could sort of guess it was a bit of wing play with like Gray, Townsend, and Anthony Gordon, who, to be fair, they probably have been their 3 best players this season, but they had no organisation at the back at all. Like, you didn't know who was passing the ball in the middle, who was going to be that, especially when Decore, got injured. You didn't know who was going to be that one player in central midfield that was going to dictate their game, because all right, Alan, he's quite good doing the dirty work of midfield, but we call him a playmaker. Gomez is a strange one. He hasn't been the same player since he had suffered that horrific injury.
No.
And that, so it's kind of difficult to be a bit critical on him in that sense, but he's definitely not the player he once was. And that, so I think Everton are in a relegation battle, and. Okay. Yeah, and like you said, with Mashiri, I'm honestly surprised Peter Reid's name hasn't come up. And because you've
been saying Peter Reid all week.
Yeah, well,
do you know something we don't?
Well, he's Everton legend. That ticks one of the boxes, doesn't it? I think he made over 150 appearances for Everton during his time. But in all fairness, he hasn't managed since like 2014, when I believe he managed something like Mumbai City. And that, but
that's real experience.
I think I'm going to be the one that goes for what I think is the obvious choice, and I think I will go for Wayne Rooney. I think what he's done at Derby County it's nothing short of a miracle, to be honest. I mean, that they've been deducted minus 21 points this season, and yet he's still got them, battling against relegation, which
they'd be safely mid-table if
absolutely. It's, I mean, all right, what Mal Morris has done behind the scenes at the club has been nothing short of disgrace. But like the EFL as well, they can't cover themselves in glory. They pretty much just want Derby to get liquidated. From an outsider looking in at Derby, the EFL pretty much just want them to get liquidated. But now what Wayne Rooney's done now is just phenomenal. He's given the fans hope. And that's what Everton fans probably want at this time. They want someone that will come in, give them hope. I mean, Rooney's pretty much had to use the youngsters at Derby County as well. And I think Rooney would probably look to the youth set, because Everton have a fantastic youth setup. I don't think they use it that
much. They've always had good players come through. Finch Farm, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it with Anthony Gordon this season. Like I said, he's been one of Everton's standout players. Oxford legend, John Joe Kenny. Yeah, John Lundstrom. Yeah. I was just thinking this. Obviously, when the boys are talking about Roberto Martinez, it's like, well, if you're going to get a former manager that's recently been sacked, why don't you get Ronald Koeman? I think Ronald Koeman's a better manager than Martinez. I mean, just because he had that one bad spat, like what was it? He had that sort of like bad like 3 or 4 months at Everton, and and again, I don't think that was just his fault. I mean, all right, he got it tactically wrong with that, but you have to look at that recruitment in the summer. They pretty much just signed 3 and 4 number 10s. I mean, surely Koeman didn't say, "Oh, I want Davy Class and I want this number 10, I want that number 10, I want every number 10 in the world," and that. But like surely if you're an Everton fan and thinking of a full manager, you'd go, right, I'd rather have Koeman than Martinez. Right, Martinez might play the more entertaining football, but defensively, Martinez isn't that good defensively. You're still going to be as wide open as anything, if not even more wide open under Martinez. And if they were to go for Martinez, you'd have to buy, pretty much a whole new backline that would suit his style of football. I mean, you look at Belgium, pretty much all of the Belgian players that he plays at at Belgium, he sort of plays 4-3-3, 3-4-3, sorry, and that he has like 3 ball playing centre backs and then like 2 wing backs to go up and down the pitch. You look at Everton's players that they currently got, and you wouldn't say they've got many ball playing centre backs, and they, Seamus Coleman ain't going to last 90 minutes running up and down.
I'm surprised he's still playing, Seamus. Fair play to Seamus.
Yeah, I mean that's why they probably brought Nathan Patterson in, which, to be fair,
that's a good signing for any new manager that does come in.
Yeah, and as much as I slated Mikalenko for his mistake against Norwich, like he's still only like 24, and he's it's new league he's come to, and that, so you can definitely tell that they are trying to freshen the squad up and that. But yeah, like I'd go for Wayne Rooney, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if they did put Big Dunk in there on an interim basis to the end of the season.
Fantastic, Ed. What have you put in the chat? Yeah, go on, Ash.
Can I throw out a few more names that you didn't mention earlier?
Absolutely can.
Just because
Ed's put a meme in the chat. There we go.
I haven't seen Ed's meme. What is it? What's he doing?
It's
you make your point.
Yeah,
I'll try and add it.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
So what I was going to say is there's sort of a reluctance from Premier League teams over the years to sign the sort of next cab of the rank in terms of the Championship. So
yeah,
there's some excellent managers in the Championship, and
they really are.
I know Everton would say they have loftier ambitions than getting a manager who's doing well in the Championship. But I'll just throw a few names out there. Steve Cooper recently come in at Nottingham Forest, has an excellent record, is turning teams around. Look at what he's just recently done at Forest. Worked at England at underage level as well, so probably going to be good with young players. Maybe giving someone like that a chance, just someone a bit different that we haven't seen before. I feel like Everton are just going round and round and round on the managerial merry-go-round, and that Mashiri has no interest in getting off. The second name I was going to mention was Tony Mowbray, who's been doing bits at Blackburn this season. And
bits and Tony Mowbray should not be in the same sentence.
Well, you wouldn't associate Tony Mowbray with attacking football, would you? But Blackburn are one of the highest scorers in the Championship, and they're having an unbelievable season. If you look at their squad, considering Bradley Dack's out, I'm pretty sure has been out injured the whole season as well. Their squad is nowhere near as good as the other ones that are up there in the top of the Championship. Tony Mowbray's doing an unbelievable job, but I haven't heard his name linked with any job that's come up at all. And last name I was going to mention, Russell Martin. Again, if you're looking for someone who plays a good style of football, who's at Swansea, it's just weird how these sort of names that do well in the Championship, unless you get your club promoted, you never seem to be linked with, a job in the Premier League.
Graham Potter's probably the last, probably the only example of that, where they've actually plucked someone up from the Championship, and
and look how successful he's been.
Exactly. I think the managerial merry-go-round is something that I'd like to touch on, which is you get your Pardew's and your Allardyces and your Pulises from a few years ago. Those are always the names that were sort of going around. I feel like there's your Puli, if you want to pluralize Pulis. Try saying that after a few Guinnesses. But I feel like there's a whole that sort of subgenre of managerial appointments is now evolving, because I feel like Nuno and Lampard and Julian Favre on every single, whenever a manager is sacked, those 3 names are always on there. Nuno, Lampard, Favre, and there's probably a couple more. I think Fonseca's always there, isn't he? Like it's just weird that these names just always come around and they never get the job. But that's one of those things. Ed, did you need to go at 7:30?
Yeah, in a minute.
Okay, that's fine, because we're going to just move on to the next one. I didn't know whether you want to.
I'll drop out now then.
This is weird, because we've never had someone drop out midway through, but this is
putting a spotlight on me.
Yeah, no, I feel like we should.
I'm just going to sneak out in the background.
No. We'll make a big fanfare for you. So Goodbye, Ed.
Ciao.
Goodbye, Ed.
See you later.
Ciao, listeners.
Ciao, listeners. Oh, thank God he's gone. Oh, God.
And then there were 4.
And then there were 4. A bit more cozier. Anyway, put in the chat if people are watching, who do you think could be the new Everton manager? Because I'll be interested to hear thoughts, because we've gone through like about 1,000 names there. So I'm sure we've missed someone out.
You should put a bet on Tony Mowbray, mate. The odds on that would be.
I think you should. I really think that's a early bar.
He's an underrated manager for what he's done at Blackburn.
Yeah.
I feel like my image of Tony Mowbray is when he managed West Brom and they were just diabolically boring, and I just can't shake it. And I feel like quite a lot of fans probably have a similar.
He's been
sort of impression of
typecast
him.
like the Rock.
Yeah, he
in
has
every
been
film.
He's been typecast as a Pulis Allardyce when he's actually probably not.
He's a Mowbray.
That West Brom team would just. He's a Mowbray. That West Brom team was just very boring. But yeah.
Do you think they'd struggle though if Diaz left, Brereton Diaz? I think they'd drop down quite a bit, wouldn't they? They're a bit. I'm not saying they're a one man team, but he's quite considerable.
There are players like Joe Rothwell that former Oxforders again. But
yeah, wow.
When Blackburn brought him in, you know, he's a good player, but you wouldn't say he was a world beater or even a definite starter in the Championship. And now he's been fantastic. So I think Tony Mowbray has actually improved quite a lot of players. And remember the Venkies, I'm pretty sure, are still at Blackburn, you know, not really signing anyone or not giving loads of funds. So I think I'm not saying he would be the ideal manager for Everton. I'm just saying, in general, I'm surprised he's not linked with more jobs. Potentially,
you're not saying he's ideal, but you're saying he's the best man for the job, is what you're saying. I think that's I've read between the lines.
I said Jesse March.
You did.
I don't want to see Ashton get Mowbray in the comments.
Get Mowbray in.
It's going to be clipped. Don't worry. It's going to be
clipped. Don't worry about it. Let's talk about Premier League postponements anyway, just sort of quickly. I just want to sort of vent for a little bit. And obviously the North London derby was cancelled or postponed yesterday because of Arsenal's crisis at the club. I think Burnley have postponed the game or going to, or
they've requested.
And obviously, lots of teams have postponed fixtures over the last maybe week or two, and I'm sure that's going to keep going. But I don't like it personally. I think they should just these are Premier League clubs, millions of players. They do have millions of players, especially for Chelsea. There's clubs with so many players, and they can't fulfill their games because a couple of their best players are out. Like Arsenal cited injuries in AFCON as one of their reasons why they can't play a game. When is injuries and also players out on loan or something? When has that ever been a thing? You know, I just feel like don't get me wrong here. Nothing against Arsenal for wanting to use the system, right? If there's a way that you could play a game against your fiercest rivals or any other game and postpone it and then play it later with your best players available, you'll do it, right? Especially in a game of fine margins and elite sports people as in the Premier League. If you've got a chance to play a game with your better players available, you do it. So nothing against Arsenal, but I feel like the Premier League are now setting a precedence that if you have your best players out, you can just postpone the game. It's fine. And, it's the Premier League.
Imagine if that was in not like the Champions League final. And
yeah.
They got through to the final and then 3 players are injured. We're going to postpone the game because 3 players are injured. The whole final's cancelled and have to rearrange it. It's just, I know it's a different thing, but you think about it you look at it in that respect, it's completely bonkers. But for some reason, it seems to be becoming, I don't know, accepted in a way.
It is because the Premier League have accepted it as a precedence. What can you do?
I think it's a shambles with the amount of young players. Like if you was a young a 23s player in the Premier League, like League 2.
Yeah.
So I'm just reading that. What does that say?
Mowbray to take Brereton with him to Everton. Mowbray in. #Mowbray in.
Tremendous.
Well, is this your Forest, mate?
Yeah, he's just worried that I mentioned Steve Cooper. He's panicking. That's why he's getting on the Mowbray.
He is absolutely panicking Skywalker that Cooper could go. But no, Jack, carry on. You were making your thought out point.
So if you're sort of like a player sort of in the fringes of the first team, training with the first team.
Yeah.
You would be like in a normal situation before all of this come in, you would be absolutely buzzing, wouldn't you? You think, oh my God, I might actually get a game here. But now there's no chance at all, because it's just every game that they think is going to have the star players are missing, they're just going to cancel it. So is it no room for these players to actually make a statement, unless they come off the bench in a game where all the stars are playing, basically, is what is going to happen.
I just feel it's absolutely wild that they are being allowed to do this. These players spent millions of pounds on academies and scouting people when they're like in the womb to, get them to play for their club in the future. And you're telling me you can't get 11 of them together? And you got players out on loan, bring them back off their loan or something. I feel like you could be allowed to do that. Oxford found a goalkeeper in like a day or 2 days of trying to find playing a game. You can get players to play for you if you try hard enough. But I just feel it's an easy way out. But again, as I said, Arsenal found a loophole in the regulations, in the system, and they've played the system. You can't blame Arsenal for that. You can only blame the Premier League and for allowing it. Chris, you're the Arsenal fan here. I've spoken to you pre-pod. If Arsenal played the North London derby yesterday, played a bunch of 16-year-olds, lost 8-0, no one's going to go, fair play, Arsenal, at least you played the game, sportsmanship, etc. They're just going to be like, well, there's nothing to gain for Arsenal to play that fixture because they don't have to, right? So as an Arsenal fan, what do you think? As an Arsenal fan, you're probably happy that you're now not playing, you weren't playing the game, but is there a part of you inside that's sort of like, doesn't sit right with you?
I was going to say, if Spurs beat a bunch of Arsenal under 16s, then they'd probably have an open top bus parade.
They would do. They probably would do. I know a few Spurs fans, they might do that.
But yeah, no, like you said before, this all comes down to the Premier League. I mean, yes, it is mastering the dark arts, if you want, from what Arsenal have done, and just Arsenal. No, Leicester have done it. Burnley are going to try and do it again. But then apparently Dyche has said they only had 10 first teamers trained today. But it's kind of like these clubs like have academies. Like use the kids and that. Like you want to train these players to be best players in the world at some clubs, or you want to try and produce more homegrown players. The best way to learn is to throw them into a game of football, and that's why. Like you said, like managers and clubs won't get credit for it, but that's why I do admire the likes of Bielsa, that he has named. I mean, I think Bielsa one game named a 15-year-old on the bench for Leeds.
Last game,
and,
yeah,
it was, wasn't it?
And you look at the game the game yesterday against West Ham. Obviously, didn't help that Firpo and Forshaw both done their hamstrings after 20 minutes, but he decided, you know what, I'll bring on 2 18-year-olds in Hjelde and Bate. I thought both of them done brilliant. I thought it was a bit harsh. Bate got subbed on then subbed off again, and that. But I thought they were both good. And you also got to give credit to Bruno Lage as well, because Bruno Lage is someone that he actually has done what you said, and actually has recorded a couple of players off loan. I know he recorded Dion Sanderson. I'm not too sure on the other player who he recorded.
Ryan Giles, I think, from
that's
Cardiff.
The one. Yeah, Ryan Giles from Cardiff. But it's also happening in the lower leagues as well. Like I know Sunderland, instead of calling off their game against Wickham, they decided, you know what, we got players out on loan, we might as well record them, get them back into the club, get them on the bench. Or I think in one case, they had to play the keeper that they loaned out, because I think both their keepers obviously tested positive in that. And that's another thing. This isn't through COVID anymore. This is
it's just a whole load of reasons.
This player's broken his toenail. We're going to have to call the game off and that. And we got the.
He's got an MOT.
Yeah, exactly. He's got his haircut booked. We got to call this game off and that. But that's another thing with Arsenal as well, that they only got themselves to blame as well, in the sense that they had Maitland-Niles and Balogun at the club at the start of the week, and sure they would have looked at it and thought, "Oh, we're running out of players." Even that they played Thursday in the Carabao Cup against Liverpool, and literally their bench was pretty much full of defenders and youngsters. I mean, and it's kind of like, even with that, it's like, surely you'd look at that and go, actually, we might have to say to Maitland-Niles and Balogun here, look, we will look to loan you out towards the end of the window, but you're going to have to stay and help, cover the injuries and the people away at AFCON. I mean,
People know AFCON. Whenever you buy a player that could go to AFCON, you know that they could go to AFCON.
Yeah, and
like, that's part of the thing. It's not a surprise for clubs, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Clubs should plan for it, and especially in like a COVID hit season as well. Because unfortunately, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, whether people like it or not. This is still going to be
parties here.
Yeah, no work events. This is work event.
This is a work event.
This is a work event. And I'll just pop open a can of Stella and that. But yeah, it's like surely like teams should really planned a lot. But well, I say teams and the Premier League they should have had a meeting before the season started and gone, if the situation gets worse, what are we going to do about it? And like the whole 14 first teamers. And that, like, of course, people are going to say, like, they're going to look at their academy players and go, well, they're not first teamers, are they? We can call this game off. Like,
people can always get around the rules no matter what. Rules are there to be broken, is what I think you're trying to make there.
Yeah.
Ash, I think Jack sort of raised this point. If you're a youngster, or you always see like your backup goalkeeper, your second choice goalkeeper, the only way that they're going to play games is either in the cup or if the first choice goalkeeper gets injured, and that's when you get your break. Same for the youngsters, you're 4-0 up in a game, someone comes off, you get your 10 minutes or whatever, and when Rashford broke for at United because they had like injuries and red cards and things like that, that's your chance. If Rashford might not have been a thing if he came through during COVID because the game would have just been postponed, right? Like, do you think as a young player at these big clubs, as Jack said, do you feel a bit aggrieved that you're stunting your potential, your chance to break through into the first team to show what you've got?
I mean, it certainly doesn't help, does it? I mean, put yourself in Charlie Patino's shoes, for example. Yeah. Probably one of Arsenal's maybe only available central midfield. Him and Lokonga, let's say. So probably highly likely to start North London derby, and then the game gets called off. And I don't know, that would probably send a message to me that I don't think you're good enough to play. Which, looking from an outsider's perspective, that might be fair enough. I don't think, based on his performance against Nottingham Forest, he is good enough to play. But that's all beside the point. With the postponements, I agree completely with what you and Chris said, so I won't really add too much for that. I do think there is an interesting situation at Burnley where they've already played 3 games less. They're trying to postpone the next game against Watford, which is obviously a huge game. And it kind of feels like the Sean Dyche is just trying to not play any games and can't get relegated.
Can't get relegated if you can't finish the season.
Can't lose if you can't play.
He's playing 4D chess.
Well, these games, they're going to have to be played at some point, and while they may call them off now, Cornet, probably their best player, is at African Cup of Nations, so it might make sense now. When they're playing 2 games a week, every week towards the end of the season, and they start picking up injuries, and, COVID will probably still be an issue as well, but the games will have to be played. They're going to be even in more trouble. So they're taking a big... I think the idea that, postponing now suddenly makes things better. You don't know what the situation is going to be later down the line, especially with the COVID situation. I mean, no one knows. And injury, suspension. So you're going to have to play those games at some point. So I don't know. But yeah, clubs, fair enough. I think in Arsenal's case and Liverpool, if the Premier League have set out the rules, however stupid they'd be, you'd be silly not to take advantage of them, I suppose.
That would be amazing, though, wouldn't it, if it got to the end of the season and it was like there was 2 teams left in it, and it was like Burnley had 4 games in hand and they had to play Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to stay up. They had to win all 4.
That would be great.
Turf Moor. Imagine that Sky Sports Turf Moor for the whole week. See if they could stay up.
That'd be unreal.
Yeah, Gary Neville's pitched outside in a tent outside. Then Burnley lose the first game. Just they're relegated.
Yeah, pack up and go home.
Yeah.
Unreal. I'd pay to see that.
Also, another thing is, it always makes me laugh because I don't know the in and outs of football, but I was laughing to myself earlier when I was thinking, how do they go about postponing these games? Do they send like a strongly worded email, or do they ring them up, leave a message on the answer phone?
Whom it may concern.
Who does it? Who actually rings up? Do they have like a person that just calls up and just rings, or
it's not the man. They have a fixture secretary or something like you do at youth football level.
I don't know. It just really made me chuckle that there was like an answer phone in like Premier League headquarters with loads of like answer phone messages. All the managers like, "Oh, can we please call the game off this week because we're a little bit short on players."
You could imagine if like a manager like Harry Redknapp was like still managing like at this time and just be like, I'm gonna have to have this game called off. You have to get this off of me.
Window down in the Land Rover. This game needs
winds
to
his
be
window
off
down.
I'd have Nico.
I just imagine there's just someone at Premier League and it's like they pick up their phone. It's just like Sean calling. No, I won't answer that. Bloody hell! He's already rung me 4 times today.
Caller ID, just Burnley FC, spam, red.
All right, Carol, you know what to do. I think we need to find out. There needs to be like a Premier League sitcom or something.
There needs to be like behind the scenes of like like they've done the Amazon documentaries, Till I Die and all of that. There needs to be like just something. It'd just be amazing to see what
all or nothing Premier League fixture secretary.
It's like all of these like when they go into like a meeting when there's a red card or something and there's like a disciplinary. Imagine how good that would be, not a fly on the wall for like a disciplinary, like a red card. And they have all these old men sat there talking about whether it should be a 2-game or a 4-game ban. Like Joey Barton sat there, just like
I'd always like that. I'd always like to see that. Actually, that is the gap in the market for that. Maybe once the pod gets enough clout, we'll invite the fixture secretary for the Premier League in as a guest, as our first ever guest star or something like that. We can, unless someone, if people in the chat know anyone at the Premier League that can get us in touch, then please do. But yeah, Premier League postponements. I don't like them. Don't want them. Let's talk about the last thing that we got on our list, and that is Christian Eriksen back in the Premier League ? Exclamation mark, because we don't know if he's going to. But a few clubs have been apparently circling Christian Eriksen, and Brentford are named as one of the clubs that have made an offer for Christian. He's currently training in, I think, the south of Switzerland, which is a very nice place to train, trying to get back to fitness. And there are people that want his signature. Chris, would you have him at Arsenal?
To be honest, if it's going to be the Eriksen that was at Tottenham and Inter Milan and obviously the star man for Denmark, I would. I think he's an exceptional player, and I think the fact that Brentford are linked with him is quality for their football club. I mean, if imagine being Brian Mbeumo and Ivan Toney right now, you're sort of licking your lips, rubbing your hands together, thinking, we got a lovely playmaker that's going to come in, set up a few goals for us. Because like an interesting stat, I was talking about this last week with people I play indoor football with on a Tuesday, and like,
where'd you play that, Chris?
I'm not going to disclose that information.
Oh, okay, good. You've learned. Good.
But what was it? They're Tottenham fans, and they said like the majority of Dele Alli's goals for Spurs were literally down to like Christian Eriksen assists, and that, which completely baffed me. I was just like, yeah, whatever. But then like actually like looked it up and was like, oh, they're telling the truth there, and that. So like listen, like Eriksen, he is a phenomenal talent in that, and he has come out and said like in a recent interview that it's his dream to play at the 2022 World Cup.
What story that could be?
That'd be brilliant. Like going from pretty much being dead, because he was dead.
Yeah.
For like a few minutes to then like coming back, like back in the Premier League, back for playing for your country at a World Cup. It'd just be like the ultimate fairy tale story, and like I think it certainly would be good for Christian Eriksen and his family.
Yeah. Ash, apart from the obvious, I think it's actually quite a low risk signing for any club that are interested in. This is a guy that's won. I don't know what he's won, actually. I don't want to make that claim. I assume he's won something in his time, but he
won Serie A with
Of course, there you go. Good fact check that. Yeah, exactly. This is a player that has done it in the Premier League. He was one of the best players in the Premier League in the season or two that he was absolutely smashing it. He's won Serie A. I think he's a low risk signing, as I said, apart from the obvious. But he would improve most squads in the Premier League. He probably gets between, I'd say, 5 to 10 goals a season, maybe. And if you're, especially a team down the bottom, that could be staying up or not. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. I think, and it's no surprise that Brentford have been the team that link with him, given their, they tend to sign sensibly in transfer windows, and they also interestingly signed quite a lot of Scandinavian players. I'm not sure if that was to do. I think one of their maybe director of football or someone behind the scenes who is involved with the transfers is also Scandinavian. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But yeah, it seems like they've sort of, I don't know if they've got ahead of the queue, but I haven't heard anyone else linked with Eriksen.
They're the only named club I've seen. Apparently there are a few, but
makes perfect sense. They don't really have any, that much creativity, Brentford, that I can think of in that sort of number 10 position. And it'll be a really huge sign if you think where Brentford were, a couple of seasons, or when they lost that playoff final like 2 years ago, and now we're sort of being linked with Christian Eriksen. That's a huge sort of, move upwards for the football club. And also for Eriksen, it's a good club where he will probably be one of the main men, I would have thought, depending on his fitness. So yeah, it makes sense for both parties. Although I kind of feel that now Brentford are interested. Other teams who Brentford are good at signing players. Maybe we should be interested in Eriksen. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes. But yeah, I kind of hope he does go to Brentford. Actually, I think that'd be quite a nice.
I think that'd be a good match.
A good story. Yeah.
Yeah. Jack, where do you reckon that Christian Eriksen might end up? Do you think he'll end up at Brentford or somewhere else in the Premier League or not?
I think it'll be Brentford. I mean, there's quite a strong Danish link, isn't there? He obviously, I think he plays with the centre back and Norgard. There, I can't remember the centre back's name. The one that come from Celtic. They're both
Norwegian.
Danish. Oh, yeah. Is he Norwegian?
He's Norwegian.
Yeah. They got Jurgensen, haven't they?
Yeah.
Huddersfield. He's Danish, I think.
Yeah, and obviously Frank's Danish manager, and I think maybe he knows him. I don't know, from the youth teams or whatever. But I think for him, it's sort of I think for Eriksen as well, I think it's quite a good team to sort of get back on track.
There could be worse teams, right? Wouldn't there?
I think, and it suits his style of play. You sort of look at the teams, some of the other teams, maybe that we're talking about Everton. He wouldn't really suit that style that Rafael would play in if he was, I don't know who the new manager's going to be. But there's sort of teams that in the Prem that he wouldn't really fit in. But I think the way that Brentford want to play, I think it does suit Eriksen.
Yeah.
The only thing that really surprised me with the wages, I didn't think that Brentford will be able to afford him, to be honest with you, because the last two teams are Tottenham and Inter Milan, who pay very good wages. I mean, Tottenham didn't at that time. It's they only play.
You'd feel it'd be a 6-month deal, right, or something. You'd imagine, or just the end of the season. So
unless he's willing to take a massive pay cut, which he generally might do,
but he might be able to.
I just didn't think that they would be able to match. Obviously, Inter Milan is an option, but I didn't think they'd be able to get close to what he was getting in Italy. But maybe,
I mean, if you say 20 grand a week for a season is now the same as 40 grand for the rest of the season. So I think they could stump up 40 grand maybe if scary. So I don't know how much his wages were at Spurs and Inter and how much of a pay cut he's willing to take.
I think Inter is considerably more than Spurs. I think it's quite eye-watering amounts, because Inter paid very well, don't they, for their players? Well, they did, and obviously not at the moment, but they did the last couple of seasons. But I agree. I think it makes sense on all levels, really. As long as the money works out and it's not, killing Brentford in the rest of the window. Not hamstringing them with just one player. I think it makes sense for everybody, Eriksen and Brentford, because it's it fits. I think for them.
We'll wait and see. Hopefully, we'll see Christian Eriksen back in the Premier League.
Well, would you have him at Brighton, Tang? Quick question for you. Would you have him at Brighton?
I think Brighton need to sign a striker before they do anything else. They've got Trossard, who's a very similar player, I think, to Eriksen. Obviously, not done it on the scale that Eriksen's done. They've got McAllister, who can play in that sort of position as well. But Brighton need a striker. They've been linked to Ben Brereton Diaz. Bring him home. Well, that's not even home. Bring him to the seaside.
Bring him home.
Bring him home. Bring him home. Very good. Very good. Get that. Clip that, please. But yeah, it's. I wouldn't take him at Brighton. I just feel like they have too many players of a similar style to him. But then, as you say, if he really wants to be on a Pebble Beach, then maybe Brighton can't say no. But I think he improves most squads in the Premier League, bar 4, maybe 5. I reckon. I think he'd be a good signer for anyone. Maybe Newcastle make a late splurge from because they can do whatever the hell they want because they have £1 billion to spend. But anyway, who knows? That's all I wanted to talk about today. What have you guys got? Anything before we go off? We've been going for just over an hour. I need to eat some food, but if you want to add anything.
I haven't really been keeping up with the AFCON, but I think there's been some...
There's been less 0-0, less 1-0s, more actual goals in games, which has been good.
Jack,
Serge Aurier, shout out.
Yeah, you missed the end of the Sierra Leone Ivory Coast. Oh, it was amazing. People are blaming the pitch, right? I'm not having it. That was shite goalkeeping. I'm sorry.
Is this the guy that lands on the ball?
And he threw
shouldered
it backwards, and he blamed the pitch. Like the pitch didn't help.
And the guy nearly fell over.
This is the bit where it's a bit of it's a calamity of errors. Nearly. I mean, if the striker would have missed the goal, that would have been that. They're just about taking it, but the goalie sort of fell over. A ball popped out between his legs, crossed it over, and then the Sierra Leone striker. I don't know what happened, but I don't know if he got really excited, but he just somehow tripped over his own feet and then was sort of falling, but somehow managed to get a touch
really
on
good
it.
Finish.
Yeah. It just chipped it over the defender somehow, and then it was just unbelievable how he managed to do it.
Let's not forget, assisted by Stephen Colker, who was playing centre back randomly up front.
He does that though. Didn't he do that for Liverpool?
Yeah. I swear Klopp brought him on as a striker in one game, and that. But fair play to Stephen Colker. He's turned his career around. He's turned his life around in not in Germany, in Turkey, and that. And obviously he's a star man for Sierra Leone at the African Cup of Nations.
He's only been playing for Sierra Leone this year.
Yeah.
In October 2021, he switched allegiances at the grand old age of, how old is he?
Must be 31.
30. Yeah. That's unreal. That is absolute, and I respect him. I respect you, Steve.
He had to request it, didn't he, though? Because he technically played for us in the... Didn't he play in
He's played for England
League?
once.
He scored for England as well.
European Championship qualifier or something.
No, I think it was that friendly when Ibra scored that overhead kick.
Oh, it wasn't. Oh, he didn't have to then. I thought it was a competitive game, so he had to actually request a change. But
yeah, because there was rumours that he was going to go to Scotland. He was going to change his allegiance to Scotland. But
he expressed his desire to play for Scotland in October 2019, and then December 2020, he expressed his desire to play football, whether that be for England or Scotland. So
he's changed the tune quite a bit, hasn't he?
Sierra Leone.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, fair play. He's playing at a major tournament, and that you got to give him credit.
Got to give him credit.
Fair, I think they've been one of the team of the tournament, haven't they, so far in terms of the way they've played? Considering they didn't have many well-known players, they actually are, taking some points off the big boys. So yeah,
including Algeria, Jack. Just to throw that out,
mate. Slow burners. That's all they are. Slow burners.
Full circle.
Yeah,
slow burners.
Algeria shout.
Now, what I will say though is I think Barnes has made a good shout with Cameroon. Obviously, not only going for the host, but going for a country that has an absolute bagsman in Vincent Abubakar up front. He's already got 5 goals for the tournament. I think he's got to go down as one of them players similar to Hulk, where he's one of them players that. He's a very good player, but he's never played in a Big 5 league. I was having a look today, he's played for Porto, Besiktas, and he's now at Al Nassr
in Saudi Arabia. Good, isn't it, Chris? If you look at the teams, I remember I was looking at him the other day because I'd heard the name, but I didn't really know his stats. His stats are he'd left Porto, but his goals per game ratio is really good.
Yeah,
good player.
Oh, well, there you go. If you want to look at Abubakar's stats, then please do. But anyway, we'll call it to an end there. We're going for about nearly an hour and 10 minutes. It's probably one of our longest pods. And we have to thank Everton Football Club for that. Anyway, please do like and subscribe to the channel. We are on 65 out of 75 subscribers, which is really great news. We're getting there. We're edging there. So we do appreciate all the likes and the comments and the follows, etc. So please keep doing that. And yeah, we'll probably see you at some point, hopefully later this week. We're just very busy, which is what it is at the minute. But yeah, anyway, waving goodbye from myself, from Ash, from Chris and Jack. And we'll see you next time.